Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, was-salatu was-salam ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. So when I was asked about the topic, what topic I wanted to speak about, I suggested the following topic, and I'll explain why before I begin. And that is how to stay positive in a negative world. And the reason why I chose this topic is because there's a lot going on right now. And there's a lot going on in the media, there's a lot going on for us as Muslims collectively, and there's also a lot going on obviously for us in a personal level. And it becomes very, very difficult sometimes to stay positive. What I want to do is I want to just go through a few steps, a few tips, things that I personally have seen the effect of, and use that as sort of a way to help us stay afloat. Because the reality is about life in general. And this is something that Allah has told us again and again in the Quran, that Allah and His Messenger have told us, that we are always going to be faced with different kinds of weather. As you can see right now, it's raining right now. And no one, no matter who they are, no matter how much money they have, no matter how much power they have, can stop the rain, right? If we go to Trump right now and ask him, yo Trump, you know, you're the president of the United States, so could you kindly make it stop raining here in Indiana? There's absolutely nothing he can do, right? And that's because this is not something that anyone has any power over. But as you see, is anyone in this room getting wet? Is anyone right now getting wet? No. Why aren't we getting wet? I just said we can't stop the rain, right? But we're not getting wet either. Why? And that's because we're inside of a shelter. And so the reality is that we don't control certain things about life. That's just a fact. But what we can control is where we are when that weather hits. What we can control is, so if it's cold outside, I can't make it warm, right? We don't control the sun. But what I can do is put on a coat. I can put on gloves. I can put on a hat. And so what I've done is I've found a way to cope. I've found a way to survive the weather, even though I can't control the weather. Does that make sense? I've found a way to stay dry, even when it's raining outside. That is what faith gives us. Faith gives us a way to stay inside a shelter, to stay dry even when it's wet outside. And even when there are storms. So what kind of storms do we have here? We have tornadoes, right? Now, even if there was a tornado, even if I had severe weather outside, there is a way to protect myself. I can go into a basement. And so the reality is that even when we have storms hit us in life, if we learn certain skills, if we learn how to be inside of the proper shelter, we won't get destroyed. And so weather will come, weather will go, hardships will come, hardships will go, fitan, tests will come and tests will go, but we will survive. Does that make sense? And to survive a storm requires certain things that you have to do. To survive the weather that comes in your life, there are certain skills. And the reality is that if we are in the habit of staying within shelter, then we will be able to survive our storms. The question becomes, how do I stay within shelter? And moreover, how do I build a shelter? Okay, I like to use this example because we all know the story, and we all, I think it's very illustrative. How many of you remember the story of the three little pigs? Okay, so like 3 of you. That's fine, I'll remind you. So the story of the 3 little pigs goes like this, yeah? There are 3 little pigs. One is really lazy, and one is sort of lazy, and one is not lazy. He works hard, okay? So the lazy one builds a very weak shelter. The lazy one builds a shelter out of something like straw or something. And so this house is not very strong. Then you have the next pig, and this pig is not quite as lazy, so he builds his house out of twigs or something like that, okay? And then you have the third pig, The third pig is working hard. So the third pig builds a strong shelter, puts in the time to make that shelter out of brick. All right. So now what happens is you have the big bad wolf come, yeah? And now the big bad wolf, does everyone know what he does? He huffs and he puffs. You know there's teachers in the room when you know exactly what the big bad wolf does, right? So he huffs and he puffs and he blows the first house down. And the reason why is because it was very weak. And then the next house, he huffs and he puffs and he blows that one down because it was also weak. But what happens with the third shelter, the one made of brick? The third shelter, he huffs and he puffs, but he can't blow it down. Why? Because it was solid, it was strong. Now here in life, we have all types of big bad wolves, okay? We have some that look like Trump. We have some that look like financial problems. We have some that look like different kinds of trials. So what we have in life is we have different things that come and huff and puff at us and try to do what? Blow our house down. Blow our house down. To break us down. To make us, to basically destroy us or to make us weak. And the reality is we can't stop the wind. We can't. We can't actually stop a wolf from doing what wolves do. What do wolves do? They huff and they puff. But what we can do is build a strong shelter. You understand what I'm saying? So now the question I get to, or the point that I'm getting to, is how do we build a strong shelter in life? How do we can't be, delusional and think that the sun is always going to be out in life, right? We can't be delusional and say, well, in my life, it'll just never rain. Because if we are that way, it's like, I read this quote recently and it said that if a person only travels when the sun is out, they won't ever end up at their destination. And the truth is that we have to keep going in life even when it's not perfect, when life is not perfect, when things are difficult. So the question becomes, how do we build that strong shelter made of brick? Yeah, and be able to handle the weather of life. Fair enough? So this is the reason why I chose this topic. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just give you guys 4 pieces of advice, all right? And within those 4 pieces of advice, there's going to be sub-advice. Cool? So to begin with, I want to tell you this, and that is there is something within our power that has a very profound effect on our life, on our psychological state, and on our spiritual state, and on our emotional state. And that is something called focus. Focus. And this is something I emphasize a lot, and I will emphasize again. What you focus on grows. So whatever you focus on in your life is going to actually start to grow. And when it grows, it starts to become bigger, and it also starts to surround you. Okay? So let me give you an example. There are some people, and their habit is that they focus on problems. Okay? And sometimes it's not for any bad intent, but it's because that's just the way they're designed. They are problem focused. And sometimes, ironically, it's because they're problem solvers. Do you guys understand what I mean? So some people are very their orientation is problem solving. Now a problem solving orientation sometimes tends to then look for the problem in any situation so as to, what? Solve it. These are the people who then you might later on say, oh, they're so critical. But the reality is they're looking for the problem so they can solve it. Do you guys understand what I mean? Now what happens with this, and this is a subtle issue, yeah, is that when you focus on problems in a situation, see, there's no situation that's ever going to be perfect, is there? Are you ever going to have a perfect situation in this life? No, it goes against the definition of dunya. Dunya, by definition, is imperfect. Everyone with me? So there's always going to be a problem. There's never going to be a perfect situation. So, but if you focus on the problem in every situation, here's what happens to it. It starts to look bigger than it is. And it will actually start to consume you. Everything that you talk about will be the problem. Everything that you think about will be that problem. Everything that maybe you post about will be about that problem. Everything you read about will be about that problem. Do you understand? And this actually becomes a pitfall that sometimes happens even to Islamic workers. So for example, an activist. An activist, mashallah, is working for a cause. And that's amazing work. But an activist has to also be careful because, for example, I'll give you an example. An activist who is fighting against Islamophobia, all right? So their work is extremely important, right? But if an activist who's fighting against Islamophobia only is reading about Islamophobia, only is talking about Islamophobia, only is posting about Islamophobia, only is discussing, you understand what happens? Do you know what happens to that person? It will start to affect them. And the reason it'll start to affect them is because everywhere they're looking, everywhere they're thinking, everywhere, it's actually the focal point is a problem. Because Islamophobia is a problem, right? And racism these are problems. But what happens is if that becomes the focal point, the only focal point in that person's life, it will actually start to affect their emotional, spiritual, and psychological state. Because what happens is it will change the way you view the world. You'll notice, okay, put aside activism for 1 second. And let me re-emphasize, this is extremely important work. This isn't to say that this isn't something that's necessary. It is. But right now what I'm saying is something subtle, and that is that we have to be mindful, regardless of our work, of what our focus is. Okay? Our focus, we have to be mindful of what is our actual focal point. But putting that aside for a second, activism, just think for a moment about just a regular person, not necessarily an activist, but their entire conversations. Like, for example, every time something bad happens, or there's some sort of fitna, some sort of like calamity we're dealing with, or even as a community, and all of a sudden, every single conversation is just about that problem. Right? That's all they have on their news feed. That's all they talk about. That's all they're posting about. Does anyone know, how does that person start to feel? Or maybe it's you. How do you start to feel? What ends up happening is you actually start to feel weighed down. And what will happen is almost a person like who's only having that as surrounding them will start to easily fall into despair. And moreover, it changes the way you view the world. So now if the only thing you're reading about is hate crimes, okay, that's it. That's day and night you're reading about hate crimes. Day and night you're talking about hate crimes. Day and night you're posting about it. What you're gonna do is almost like you're seeing the world in a negative way. And so you will maybe you'll feel that people are more antagonistic towards Muslims than they actually are. And that's because it skews the way you view your reality. So then what's the balance? Because you might say, well, okay, well, what are we supposed to do? Are we just supposed to dig our heads into the sand and pretend that this isn't happening? And my answer is no, absolutely we don't dig our heads into the sand and pretend this isn't happening. But again, and I emphasize this, it's about your focal point. Yes, we should be aware. Yes, we should be active. But make sure that your focal point is not the problem itself. That your focal point, and I'll give you an example of what I mean. When Musa alayhi salam is standing in front of the Red Sea, right? And he has an army behind him, and he's got a very serious problem, okay? He's got a giant body of water in front of him, and he's got an army behind him, and he looks trapped. But what was his focal point in that moment? Anyone? Allah. Do you see the difference? It's not that he was in denial of his reality. His reality was that he's got an army behind him and he's got a Red Sea in front of him. But his focus was not on the Red Sea, and his focus was not on the army. And in fact, you see the contrast between him and Bani Israel. Because Bani Israel were focused on the army. فَلَمَّا تَرَاءَ الْجَمْعَانِ قَالَ أَصْحَابُ مُوسَى إِنَّا لَمُدْرَكُونَ. That when the armies, the groups saw each other, so you have Bani Israel, the children of Israel, seeing the army. When they saw each other, the people of Musa alayhi salam, Bani Israel, what do they say? What's their response? Because what's their focus? Their focus is on their army, right? We're doomed. And that was their response. Inna lamudrakun. Indeed, we will be overtaken. They fell into despair. And the reason they fell into despair, it was because of their focus. Make sense? Inna lamudrakun, they said. And then Allah tells us what Musa alayhi salam says. Qala kalla. You see like a complete contrast. Qala kalla. He said no. And kalla in Arabic is a very emphatic, no way, absolutely not. It's all of that in just one word. Kalla. Inna ma'aya rabbi sayahdeen. Indeed, my Lord is with me and He will guide me through. Musa alayhi salam wasn't looking at the problem. He was aware of the problem, folks. He's not like in denial. He's aware of the problem, but his focus wasn't the problem. His focus was Allah. Do you see the difference? His focus was Allah. And he said, Inna ma'aya rabbi sayahdeen. Indeed, my Lord is with me and He will guide me through this. He will get me through this. So no matter how dark it gets outside, or no matter how much we feel like things are closing in on us, if our focal point is Allah, then we don't feel despair. Do you see the difference? It's because you know, just like Musa alayhi salam knew that Allah was with him. And if Allah is with you, it means what? He'll get you through. And that was the yaqeen and the tawakkul and the trust of Musa alayhi salam. But believe me, it cannot happen unless you have the right focus. If he were to focus instead on how big the Red Sea is, just that, he's gonna be like, have the exact same reaction as Bani Israel. If his focal point was on how powerful Pharaoh is, he wouldn't be able to have that reaction. But Musa alayhi salam was trained. His heart was focused on Allah. Kalla, inna ma'aya rabbi sayahdeen. Indeed, my Lord is with me and He will guide me through this. And Allah did exactly that. Allah told him, strike the sea, and Allah opened the sea for him. This is a lesson for us. This is a timeless lesson for us. That if your focus is Allah, He can get you out of every situation. He will save you. But it has to be, it's really about us, about where is our trust? Where do we place our trust? Tawakkul, this concept of relying on Allah, it can't happen unless we have the right focus, right? You can't have trust in Allah if your focus is on other than Allah. Simple as that. But if your focus is on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then no matter what situation you're in, and you're aware of it, but you're not afraid. Because what did I say at the beginning? What you focus on does what? What you focus on grows. There's a reason Allah told us to pray not once or twice or even 3 times, but 5 times a day. What is that doing? It's making us focus on Allah. It's shifting our focus away from whatever work we happen to be doing at the moment, whatever problem we happen to be in. You see, no matter what your situation is, you still need to turn and pray. You know what that means? Do you know what that does? It means that you're at work, you leave your work and you focus on Allah. It means you're at the mall, you leave that sale and you focus on Allah. You're on your laptop, you're on your phone, you leave that phone, you leave that laptop, you leave that Facebook, you leave that meeting, you leave that class, whatever it is, and you focus on Allah. Allah's training us to focus on Him and not on whatever it is that we're doing in the dunya. It's to shift our focus to Him. And this is training. This is training us. This is what Musa alayhi salam, he went through this training, right? And because he had that training, when he was now faced with a problem. Now he's faced with a problem. What are we going to do when we're faced with a problem? And he was able to put his full reliance on Allah. Why? Because he was focused on Allah. قَالَ كَلَّا إِنَّ مَعَيَ رَبِّي سَيَهْدِينِ. Okay, so we talk about focus. Now, the second thing I want to say, well, before I move on. So in terms of focus, how do I have the right focus? How can I have the right focus? Number one is what I expose myself to, okay? let me just say this. Let me give you an example. You know the dua, how many of you have ever been to the Kaaba? Okay, when you're in the Kaaba, you learn that the sunnah is that for the entire last part of the tawaf, what dua are you supposed to say? رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Oh Allah, give us in this life good, and give us in the hereafter good, and protect us from the hellfire. Do you notice in this dua there's 3 parts? There's 3 parts, yeah? Now, out of those 3 parts, how many are about dunya? 1, right? رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا. You don't forget it, you have it there. You have the first part about dunya, but then the second part is about the hereafter. And what's the third part about? The hereafter. Where is Jahannam? In the hereafter. So you notice that even in this dua, where is the focus? The focus is more on akhirah than it is on dunya, right? So the reality is that Allah doesn't tell us to forget about dunya completely, but Allah is showing us where our primary focus should be. Our bigger focus is on Allah in the hereafter. Okay, so if I do that, if I expose myself to, see, it has to do with what am I exposing myself to. I'll tell you something just practical. Facebook, okay? Facebook is nothing more than a tool, just like the internet, just like a phone. It can be used for good or it can be used for evil. Fair enough? Same with the internet. Like, you know what I mean? All these Islamic lectures, they're on the internet. There's also a lot of filth on the internet too, right? So the idea is that these are tools. These are tools. Facebook is a tool. One thing I'll tell you that I've learned is that look at your news feed once in a while. Look at your news feed. The content of your news feed actually says a lot. And it affects you. I'll tell you why. Because the reality is we use social media. We're on our social media. And when we're on our social media, you have a news feed you have a feed for Facebook and you have a feed for Instagram and for Twitter, etc. If you just look at the content, it'll give you an idea of what you're ingesting. Make sense? For example, you want to know what you're eating? Maybe open up your fridge, right? It's going to show you the quality of what you're eating. You want to know what, look at your plate before you eat. That's what's going in, yeah? Now, if that food is covered in mold, you open the fridge and all the food is rotten, or the food on your plate is rotten, and then you eat it, what's going to happen to you inside? It doesn't take a doctor. Y'all are going to get sick, right? Because why? Because the quality of your food is bad. You're actually ingesting toxins. You're ingesting poison. Mold is poisonous. It will harm you internally. It's the same thing with your feed, with your news feed, with your Facebook news feed, with the articles you're reading, with the posts you're looking at, your Instagram, who you follow on Instagram. It's like looking at your plate before you eat it. How's the quality? Because that stuff is being ingested. It's being ingested in a different way. It's going through your eyes, and then it's going into your heart and your mind. So what you're actually doing is you're feeding your soul. And that's actually more important than even your body, because the food that you put into your soul, it stays there. The food you put into your body goes into the toilet, okay? The food that you're taking into your soul affects your soul. Your soul is something that's like eternal. You understand? It's something that's going to go and live forever, eventually, right? You go from this life, you go into the grave, and then from the grave you go into hellfire or you go into paradise. So this soul is actually staying with you. You understand? And so the quality of the food that you're giving your soul is pretty important. And that's what it is. It's what you read. It's what you look at. It's what you look at on TV, on billboards, on magazines, on your Facebook, on your Instagram. All of that is food. Think of that as food. Look at the quality of it. Ask yourself, is this healthy food? Is this organic and raw and all that stuff? Or is it covered in poison? Is it mold? Okay? And when you start to clean up your food, it cleans up your soul. That's just practical advice. One thing that learned is that you can make your news feed actually healthy. You know that? There's this thing called unfollow, folks. Yeah? There's something called unfollow. They don't have to know. You know what I mean? You don't have to unfriend them unless you want to, but you can unfollow and nobody knows. If somebody is posting garbage, or just like they ate a burger and then they ate a different kind of burger and that's it. That's okay. So there's ranges of different kinds of food, okay? There's absolute poison, I get it. And then there's amazing healthy food, but then there's something in between which is just useless. And I'll tell you this, even overeating useless food, or even if it's neutral but you overeat, and you're still gonna get unhealthy. So my point is this, you can make your social media healthy for you, where it's actually growing your head and your mind, and it's helping your heart, or you can just make it useless. Like, what did Kim Kardashian wear today? See, Instagram is one of these things where you have a whole range of things you can follow. Do you guys know what I'm saying? If you start out by cleaning up your Instagram, just clean it up. Meaning, look at who you're following and just clean it up. Instead of following just useless things, and I'm just gonna now put aside for a second the blatant fahsha. I'm just gonna put aside haram stuff for a second. Because it's obvious, okay? Let me just tell you this. Whatever you take into your eyes, it's gonna affect your heart. It's the same thing as drinking poison. It's gonna affect your body. That's just a fact. So I'm gonna put aside haram for a second, and now I'm just gonna look at uselessness. Just complete useless info, okay? Useless, input, all right? Now, this seems innocent. It might, okay, every single person you're following is a fashionista. Awesome, okay. But the problem with that is that becomes your focal point, and then you know what? That becomes what you care about most. And that's actually dangerous. The reason why, so this might say, okay, so what? It's not haram, okay? But the problem is, what is our concern? What is our greatest concern in life? One of the issues I've found is that depending on, especially now with social media blowing up, yeah? What's happened is now, even more than before, we are obsessed with appearances. Obsessed with appearances. What does that mean? It means that how I look, how I dress, how I appear becomes of utmost importance, more than anything else. And that in and of itself isn't healthy, okay? Because what it's done is, it's skewed what's really important. And now it's how I look. You know what I mean? It's everything is you gotta look perfect. You gotta pretend you're perfect. There's an obsession with perfection. You know what I mean? If you have anything that's imperfect about you, put a filter on it, right? And there's filters, but then there's also filters. Even in life, we're just all wearing masks. We're just pretending. And this is a very unhealthy, because what we've done is we've completely missed the point of what really matters. We've missed the point. And that's not innocent. That's actually killing our hearts. One of the things that you'll find is that there's a few things that can kill the heart. There's a few things that can kill the heart. One of them is sins. That's clear, okay? But there's something else that can kill the heart. And that is something called ghafla. Does anybody know what ghafla is? Ghafla is just heedlessness. It means that, okay, I might not be involved in sin, I might not be clubbing and drinking and all this, but I am completely, I've missed the plot. All I care about is fashion, what this person's wearing, what that person's saying, what this person, I'm going to this party, are you going to that? It's just, I've actually killed my heart, because not necessarily through outright sin, but because all I care about is superficial things. I'm missing what really matters. And that's just as dangerous. That's just as dangerous. Because think of a person, see, there's two ways to die. Or basically, you can eat poison and die, right? We already talked about poison. But I can also just starve and that will also kill me, right? If I starve, I'll also die, yeah? So when a person isn't getting the remembrance of Allah, and instead the only thing that they're taking in is dunya, like, things about that have to do with money and fashion and status and celebrities and blah, 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 right? All that's it. So then what's happening is it's like I'm starving my soul. Get it? Because I'm not giving my soul its actual food, which is the remembrance of Allah. Makes sense? And as a result, I may not be dying from poison, but I'm dying from starvation. And that's ghafla. Ghafla is a person who is heedless, and so they're not taking in what they need for your soul to be healthy and alive. It's like a person deprived of oxygen. Okay? Because the oxygen of the heart and the soul is the remembrance of Allah. And I don't have that in my life because I'm so full with fashion. I'm just full. I don't got no space, That's it. That's what fills my head. That's what fills my heart, or money, or status, or power, or whatever it is that I'm obsessed with. And because that's all I'm full with, I don't actually have space to take in oxygen and actual food. So if that makes sense, this is very, very important, what we ingest. Just think of it as food, okay? Food or oxygen. The other thing that I want to emphasize is managing thoughts. Managing thoughts. One of the things that we have to realize is we have a nafs. A nafs is our lower self, right? And we have shaitan. And the nafs whispers and shaitan whispers. And so not everything that occurs to our brain is healthy. And some of it's just garbage. Just complete garbage. So we have to be very careful about our thoughts. Managing the thoughts. If you don't manage the thoughts, it's sort of like you're in your house and you just it's nighttime and you're getting ready to go to sleep. You have your family, you have valuable things in the house, but you leave the front door wide open. You leave the windows wide open. And then robbers come in and you're like, wait, what happened? Well, whose fault is it? You left the front door open. You left the windows open, so a robber came in and took stuff that you care about. This is the problem with our mind. If we don't we don't guard our mind, our thoughts, and we don't guard our heart, then what happens is we're leaving it open to all these different suggestions. Suggestions of shaitan, suggestions of the nafs. And this will have a very poisonous impact on the condition of our hearts and the condition of our minds. Because shaitan is there pouring filth in our mind, and he will put lots of negative thoughts in our head. If we entertain these thoughts, it's like, so the robber comes in because you left the door open, and then guess what? You say, hey, have a seat, have some food. I'm saying, stay for a while. That's pretty insane, right? But that's what we do with these shaitani thoughts, negative thoughts, thoughts about Allah, even negative thoughts about yourself. Don't think that you're holy because you're hating on yourself. That's not righteousness to have self-hate. Self-hate is actually from shaitan. I'm going to repeat that. Self-hate is from shaitan. These deprecating thoughts about yourself, that's not from Allah. That's actually shaitan, because shaitan knows that if you hate yourself, then you're not even going to have the energy to want to worship Allah or repent or anything. Because hating on yourself is like beating yourself. If someone's beat up, where's going to be their energy to do anything? They're going to become totally, paralyzed. And so self-hate, these thoughts, these bad thoughts about yourself, they're also shaitani. That also needs to be blocked. Those things need to be, don't allow those in. And then once they come in, you give it a place that you give these thoughts, you engage them, you even feed them. That's like taking a robber and feeding him, Like, here, have some food, get stronger, stay a while, here's a room, here's a guest room, go ahead and stay the night. No, you don't let these things in, you block these thoughts. A thought that is self-hating or a negative thought about Allah or about any of these negative thoughts, do not entertain them. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Replace them with positive thoughts. Do not feed negative thoughts. Realize that your brain, your mind, your thoughts, the suggestions that go into your heart, guard it like you guard your house. Guard it. You know what I mean? Keep it clean in there. Don't allow a robber come throw filth inside your house. Okay? So that's very, very important in staying positive. It's extremely important. What you think about, what you see, what you read, what you ingest. So far, what have I said? I've said just like with your body, what you eat, yeah? Same thing. What you're ingesting of data, things that you're reading, things that you're seeing, things that you're listening to. Manage these things just like you manage. If you want to be healthy, you manage what you eat. Okay? Same thing. And you don't starve. Don't only be looking at things that are useless. Okay? Because then you're not feeding your soul the food that's keeping it alive. And that's through the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So make sure that your diet is good, what you're ingesting, what you're taking in is good, and also make sure that you're not letting in these poisonous thoughts. Guard your house, your heart and your mind. All right? Number two is this. There's going to be fear. There's going to be things you're afraid of. And I'm just going to make this one really simple. Turn your fear into dua. Turn your anxieties into dua. Meaning, I'm scared of something. I'm terrified that XYZ is going to happen. Everyone has fears, right? Now, how do we typically deal with fear? What we typically do with fear is we feed it. How do we feed fear? By just thinking about it. And then all these scenarios come, right? I'm afraid of something happening to someone I love. So what I do is I think of all the different possible ways that something could happen to someone I love. I think of this scenario and that scenario. All I've done is I'm feeding the fear. I haven't actually solved anything. Instead of feeding fear, turn it into dua. That thing that you're afraid of, make dua about it. Simple as that. Immediately stop it, stop the thought, and then turn and focus that feeling of fear and anxiety into making dua. Ask Allah for protection. And then after you've done that, put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I've given it to Allah. And don't keep feeding that fear. Make sense? Okay, number 3. Take your pain, so the things that happen in your life that hurt you, things that happen that disappoint you, and turn it into growth. So use those things that happen, take the lessons from them, and grow, and continue to become a better person. And let it make you more compassionate. See, the thing is about, if you look at all the prophets, peace be upon them all, they all went through challenges in life. And you know, one of the things that these challenges do for people is it increases their empathy. It increases their compassion for others. That when you've been through something tough, you feel for others. Yeah, you feel more mercy and compassion for others. Let it make you a better person. Don't let it harden you. Let it soften you. That when you go through difficulty, let your pain soften you, not harden you. And one thing I want to remind you of is this. There's a hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ says, عَجَبٌ لِأَمْرِ الْمُؤْمِنِ. The matter of a believer is strange. أَمْرُهُ كُلُّ خَيْرٍ. That all of his or her matters are good. If there's something that you want, you're grateful, it's good for you. Something you don't want, something that hurts you, you're patient, is good for you. And this is only the case for a believer. Do you know what this hadith means? It means that no matter what happens to you in your life, as long as you respond with either gratitude or patience, is good for you. So you never lose. You actually never lose as long as you have faith and as long as you respond in the right way. So take your pain and turn it into growth and compassion and let it make you a better person. One other thing is, be mindful about this focus on your painful past. On your painful past. As they say, the past is a place of reference, not a place of residence. A place of reference. You look back at your past to learn from it, but you do not become consumed by your past. Okay? You learn from it, but you don't become consumed. And then finally, my last piece of advice, number 4, is protect yourself. have a shield of protection. And that shield of protection is through your dhikr, through your remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I told you that dhikr is food. Dhikr is food for the soul. It's also protection. When you look at the collection of dua, what is it called? Fortress of a Muslim. It's called Hisn al-Muslim. It's a collection of du'as that protect you. It's a fortress. So 3 things in the dhikr that I'm going to say. Number 1 is the salah. The salah has to be something that you don't compromise on. It's breathing oxygen, right? Number 2 is the adhkar. The adhkar is something you can download apps onto your phone for dua. My Dua is one example of a really great app. And what you can do is, after every morning Fajr prayer, open your app and read the morning supplications. Then after Asr, open your app and read the evening supplications. And before you sleep, read the ones for sleep. Okay? These du'as will absolutely revolutionize your state, revolutionize how you react to the world, how you live. It becomes a protection for you. As I mentioned, there's waswasa all the time from shaitan and from the nafs. This becomes a shield, these adhkar. And then the last part is Quran. Make sure you have a consistent relationship with the Quran, and this will be part of the shield that protects you. Now, all these 4 things, I'm just going to recap. Be careful what you focus on, and what you focus on grows. Make sure, and what you focus on is affected by what you ingest, okay? By what you entertain, by your thoughts, and which kinds of thoughts you allow in, feed, entertain. Number 2, turn your fear into dua. Number 3, turn your pain into growth. And number 4, protect yourself through the dhikr, the adhkar, the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم إنه غفور رحيم سبحانك الله وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. I believe we have a few minutes, inshallah, for Q&A. Yes. Anyone have any questions? I guess I just explained everything just so perfectly that there's no... Okay, go ahead.
You talk about of course, like your demand's always going to go up exactly. So what's your biggest advice? Because when it's up, we think we're on top of the world.
Right.
And then when it's down, it's very easy to fall into despair. So how do we go back
from the lows? Okay, great question. I'll repeat her question. So all of these things, they're easy when you're high, right? In your Iman, when you're in a Iman high. But what happens when you're in an Iman low? Because obviously Iman rises and falls. We know this from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where Abu Bakr and another companion comes to him and says, we've become hypocrites. And he says, why? He says, because when we're with you, we see our Iman is so high, it's as if we see Jannah and Jahannam with our eyes, but when we go with our families, our Iman is different, it goes down. And the Prophet ﷺ said, if your Iman was the same all the time as when you're with me, the angels would shake hands with you in the streets. And so he teaches even them, right? These are the best people, and yet their Iman goes up and down too. And this is part of what? Being human. So what he teaches us is how to handle the lows. And this is how you handle the lows. Everything that I said in these 4, like I gave you a prescription of 4 things, right? Make sure that you hold on to those things, high or low. If you hold on to your salah, no matter how you're feeling, if you hold on to your adhkar, no matter how low you're feeling, it just becomes like I have a question for you. When you're feeling depressed, do you stop breathing? When you're having a bad day, do you stop, I haven't brushed my teeth for a month, or I haven't taken a shower for 5 months. Like, we don't do these things. Why? Regardless of how high or how low I am, I have to keep breathing to stay alive. And I have to keep taking a shower, and I have to keep, brushing my teeth. I have to still keep eating and drinking water. These are just bare minimums to stay alive. And so this spiritual prescription that I gave is just like that. It's like oxygen, water, food. It just keeps you alive. And what happens if you stick to these things, especially salah? Like, I'm going to tell you this. Everything I've given you, these are all like, dude, don't eat poison if you don't want to die. You know, keep eating if you want to stay. That's all necessary. But salah is like oxygen. Meaning, you give up salah, it's like immediate death. You get it? You might like be able to hobble around as long as you have oxygen if you're not eating healthy or whatever. But without oxygen, don't even talk to me about anything because you're going to be dead. Salah is like that. Makes sense? Fair enough? Just think of it like that. So when you're in an iman low, don't give up your salah. You get it? You just think of salah, even if you feel like, oh, but my quality of my salah is awful right now. But you know what? Have you ever been to Cairo? The quality of the oxygen there is pretty awful. But you have to still breathe. You know what I'm saying? The quality, it's so polluted. Yeah, but you can't say, well, you know what? Right now I'm in Cairo and the quality of the air is just not perfect. So I'm just going to breathe next month when I'm back in wherever. This doesn't work. Or next year or whatever I'm leaving. You know what I mean? So the idea is that, yes, we might not be having a perfect salah at that moment. We may not be at the top of our iman game, but you have to stay alive anyways. And what happens eventually is you'll go back up, as long as you don't let go of the bare minimum. And the bare minimum is oxygen, my sister. You know, it's like, it's oxygen, it's food, it's water. And then you'll be able to go back up eventually. But here's the problem. The problem comes that when you're at your low and you say, you know what, I might as well just stop praying. Because you know what, shaitan comes and says, you're just like, your salah is terrible. You're committing this sin. You're committing that sin. You're just a hypocrite. You're going to go pray? So just stop praying. Oh, and while you're at it, you might as well take off your hijab too, because you're just a terrible person. And then when you start to give in to those thoughts, that's what happens is you just start going lower and lower and lower. And that's the whole objective, isn't it? I mean, that's his objective, is to make you go into despair. So really my advice is just stay alive spiritually, and you'll, like the Prophet ﷺ said, Iman rises and falls. You will go back up. Everything in life, there's nothing stays the same. But if you stop breathing when you're low, then that's the problem. That's when a person drowns. Yeah, that's just hold on to your life jacket and you'll be okay. You'll go back. Any other? Yes.
So how do you translate that into your daily living? Obviously, we're not living in a vacuum. You concentrated, which is a great talk, a great presentation, on how to improve yourself, response and purify your soul, purify your soul. But at the same time, what is it that we're dealing with day-to-day activity with people, with life, with events, with what's going on, in our society here, in TV, in the country, in the world. So how do we deal with that also? Because one thing is to purify ourselves in our responses. At the same time, we keep being bombarded by all of those, extraneous factors that are affecting our life too. We don't live in a tent.
True. So what he's saying is, how do you deal with everyday life, the challenges? Okay, these are all like important principles, but what do we do about this stuff that's bombarding us, negative news, this and that? Everything I said is absolutely connected to that. So what I'm saying is, someone might listen to this and say, okay, that's all great, that's stuff you do in the masjid, but then what do I do about this? But that's my whole point. Everything that I said right now is absolutely intimately connected to how I'm dealing with all that. See, the Prophet ﷺ, when he said, let me give you an example. When he said that the people will soon come together to attack you, like people call one another to eat from their dish. And then the companions asked, is it because we will be small in number? And he said, no, you will not be small in number. But what will happen is that Allah will take the fear of you out of the hearts of your enemy, and in your heart will be something called wahan. And he said that you will also be like the froth on the ocean. You know, on the ocean, there's just these little like bubbles. It has no power, no determination. It just goes wherever the tide takes it. And he said this disease that's in the hearts of the people, that's what's going to make them weak politically. Because he says your enemies are going to attack you. That's a political situation, right? That's a political circumstance, and it's external. But he's linking it to the internal. He's linking it to this disease called wahan. And what does he define it as? حُبِّ الدُّنْيَا وَكَرَاهِيَةُ الْمَوْتِ. It's the love of dunya and the hatred of death. So we can't actually separate these things. That our condition outside is connected to our condition inside. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. That Allah doesn't change the condition of a people until they change what's inside themselves. I'm not talking that we don't work, or we don't do activism, or we don't get involved. Of course we do. We do. But we cannot neglect the internal work, because all the external work in the world will not be effective if we're not working inside. That's what the ayah means. Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. Allah doesn't change the condition of a people. We can do all the activism and political work that we want. We can bang our head against every wall, and we can try to be involved in every campaign, and absolutely nothing will change until we change ourselves. And that's my point. I'm not saying we only do one. I'm not saying we only read Quran in the masjid and do our adhkar. That's not it. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying without that, we're never going to see change. And it is not enough to just do activism. And it is not enough to just be involved in that campaign and this. It's not going to change our condition until I change inside. And so we have to do both. We actually have to do both. There has to be people working at different levels, but every single individual, this is a fard ayn. The fard ayn, the individual fard obligation, is the internal work. Yes, there's going to be people working external, this person's doing this job. We all have different roles, but the role that every single one of us has a fard ayn, like an individual fard, is internal. The tazkiyah, the purification and feeding of the heart and the soul, is something every single person needs to do. And when we start to change and purify ourselves inside, our entire condition will change. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises. But it won't happen until we do that. And if we continue to neglect what's happening to us inside, these diseases that are taking over our hearts, we're never going to see change. And it's not going to matter how many political groups we're part of or how many campaigns we work. It's not going to actually change our condition. Yes. Yeah.
So I work with a lot of people my age and then people who are younger than me even, and they we hold camps, we hold retreats, they come, and it's something that I'm noticing is becoming like a bigger issue is just like how to actually accept the negative, or that like bad things happen to them, and how you explain like why bad things happen. Because a lot of people are like losing faith in Allah, saying like Allah doesn't love me, I'm a bad person, this is why this is happening to me. Then they like leave the entire faith. So how do you even explain or begin to explain like why these things even happen?
Okay, so to repeat her question, she's saying that a lot of people having faith crisis because they don't understand how this question of why do bad things happen to good people, and they can't reconcile it, and it makes them lose their faith, or they say things like God doesn't love me, and they just lose their faith. First of all, the reason why I quoted that hadith is because that hadith that I quoted, the ajabun li amri al-mu'min, the matter of a believer is strange. That hadith teaches us that bad things never happen to good people. That in fact, whatever happens to a believer is good for him or her. And it has everything to do with my response. Okay? But that's a different way of looking at the world. See, if I see everything that happens to me as a way to get closer to Allah, then everything becomes good for me, even if it's painful. Make sense? So, when you get a shot, suppose you're sick and you need a shot of medicine. And this medicine is going to actually save your life, but it has to be through a shot. What are you going to say? Okay, right? Yes, there's some temporary pain, but it's curing me. The needle has medicine that's curing me. That's a different way of understanding versus a child who doesn't understand. They're just going to look at that needle and just scream and cry and just be angry, right? Because they don't understand that it's medicine. So it has to do with, number one, it has to do with understanding that everything Allah gives us as a believer is good for us, even when it comes through a needle. Even if it comes and I don't understand it. Another example is if we go outside now and your mom is picking you up, she's driving, and you ask her, where are we going? And she says, just wait and see. Are you gonna phone the police because you're really scared? Are you gonna be like, yo, 911, I'm being taken somewhere, I don't know where it is. Why aren't you gonna call the police? Because you trust your mom, that's it. But if it was a stranger that you didn't trust, you'd call the police. Do you understand? So the reality is that sometimes Allah does things in our life and we don't understand. We don't understand. He's taking us somewhere, we don't know where. But if you trust Allah, then you're not going to be scared. You're not going to be anxious and worried. You may not know, like in this example, you don't know where your mom's taking you, but you trust your mom completely. You're not worried that she's going to hurt you. But we don't have enough trust in Allah. This is the problem. So a lot of it has to do with getting to know Allah. Really. Like the answer to your question is, these people, these youth, it's about getting to know who Allah is. Because the more we know Allah, the more we put our trust in Him. If we know, first of all, Allah is Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Allah is, He has so much mercy for us, even more than a mother for her child. If we knew that, if we really knew that, then we wouldn't be worried. You understand? Husn al-dhann billah. What's husn al-dhann billah? It means, just like, remember you said you're not scared of your mom? Why? Because you know she has your best interest in mind. You're not worried she's going to take you, throw you in a ditch and leave you. You have a good opinion of your mom. See, husn al-dhann billah means you have a good opinion of Allah. You know that whatever Allah is doing with you is for your own good. That's part of knowing Allah. And when you know who Allah is, that He has your best interest in mind, that He's not going to hurt you, then it becomes easier to cope, even when you don't understand. Even when you have to take a needle, even when you don't know exactly where you're going, but you have full hope and trust in Allah, that He has your best interest in mind. So I mean, that's really what it is. It has to do with knowing who Allah is, and then putting your trust in Him and knowing that He's not gonna make you get lost or hurt you. Everything Allah does is for our own good. The matter of a believer is strange. Everything is good for them. Any last question? Yes.
Well said. A lot of things you said I thought were really, inspiring in terms of just our connection to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala and our spirituality is very central. But what I also feel like is, I have a question about is that you could do that and live kind of a very individualistic life, right? Where you're kind of, I'm praying my salah, but I'm most praying about myself. I'm doing my adhkar, but I'm not really connecting with my family members or people in my community, especially in places like Northwest Indiana, where we don't have a huge Muslim community like in Chicago or other places. So my question kind of relates to when you feel that type of separatedness from the Muslim community, what then becomes what then is the role of community within all of this, right? So it seems that seems to be a really necessary aspect of feeling grounded, feeling positive. But how do we actually go about doing that when we're forced to be separated from one another?
Okay, great question. So to repeat his question, a lot of what we spoke about right now was individualistic. How does community fit? Okay, especially he's saying in this situation, you guys are you have a small community, it's not that easy to be connected to the community. Where does community fit in? That's a whole, a discussion in and of itself. A lot of times I give this talk, and one of the take-home messages that I try to impart to others is this, to sort of summarize. If you study the ayah, the Quran and the Hadith and the Sunnah, you'll find that there's one theme again and again and again throughout the text, and that's this: the way we treat the creation is how we should expect the Creator to treat us. You're going to find this theme again and again. How we are with people, and it isn't only people, but even animals. Like you'll see this theme. How we treat the creation is how the Creator will treat us. And I give you example after example. The Prophet ﷺ said, have mercy on the people, have mercy on those who are on the earth, and the one in the heavens will have mercy on you. So mercy. And then the other side too, the one who does not have or show mercy will not be shown mercy by God. Again, that connection, that parallel. We're told, for example, in a hadith, that if we help another person in need, Allah will help us when we're in need. That if we say, if a person is in a difficult situation and we help them out of that difficult situation, Allah will help us on the Day of Judgment. And if we shield the flaws of another person, Allah will shield our flaws. And again, these parallels. So much so, to point out, the extent of this, the Prophet ﷺ says in this Sahih Hadith that he said that I prefer to walk with my brother/sister in their time of need than to be in i'tikaf in this masjid. And he's pointing at which masjid? Masjid al-Nabawi. Okay, so we're not even just talking about this masjid, may Allah bless your masjid, but we're talking about the Masjid al-Nabawi in Medina, where one prayer is equivalent to 1,000 in another masjid. He's saying that I prefer to help my brother in need, in his walk with my brother in their time of need, than to be in i'tikaf in this masjid for a certain period of time, not just one night. So this shows us the extent of our relationships with one another, how important that is with regards to our relationship to Allah. And one of the things that you'll find is sometimes the fastest way to, for example, get the forgiveness of Allah is to forgive someone who's wronged you. You know how I know that? Because in the Quran, in the time when Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he found out that one of the people accusing his daughter or spreading the rumor about Aisha radiallahu anha was a relative. And a relative who he was financially supporting. Right? And Allah reveals a verse about this because when Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu found out about this, all he did was stop the financial support. He didn't go looking for revenge or try to harm this man. He was financially supporting this man. All he does is withhold. What would we do? That's all he does, withhold the financial support. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals an ayah about this incident at this time. And Allah says, let them pardon and overlook. أَلَا تُحِبُّونَ أَن يَغْفِرَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ? This is what Allah says. Let them pardon and overlook. Do you not love for Allah to forgive you? So you see the connection that's made here is Allah is saying that us forgiving this person who wronged us is parallel to Allah forgiving us. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger make these parallels all the time. How we are with people is how we should expect Allah to be with us. Very important. You cannot separate the community from the individual. Okay. Subhanakallah wa bihamdak. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.